Lots of people talking about this subject at the moment, and you feel very deeply that this is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction.
Yes, I do. Obviously, I know that Tony's going to say something very different, and I've known Tony over many years. I think at the moment what we need to do is just sit back. Cressida Dick, who's the head of the police service in the Met, has made it very clear that is not the solution. Let's not forget, within 8 minutes, those 3 men, those terrorists, were taken out. We have a capacity at the moment, using the military and that support, to actually deal with what's in front of us at the moment. This will take a long time and a lot of strategy to think about how we can arm officers. Many officers, as you both know, I'm from a big police family. None of us ever wanted to be armed. I know things have changed, but it will take a long lead-in to have more firearms officers trained. And what we want those officers trained to be at the top of their game. Tony's one of those people who had that training. You two came to the firearms range with me, and you met that guy who was, you know, the top trainer, who's an instructor, who said, I would never want to see every officer armed because that will dilute our policing response. So I'd be against that. I think we need to be looking at a broad strategy around communities working together. I do not believe that all these terrorists that are out there, people don't know what's going on in the communities. We need to stop being politically correct and say, if you think that someone in your community, you've got some suspicions, pick the phone up. You can make a difference. Firearms officers, right now, all officers being armed, will not make that difference.
Okay.
Well, as you said, the Met Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick, said we've superbly trained, highly capable officers. You saw that demonstrated on Saturday night. Sadly, they arrived after the call. I take your point. This was the point of arming officers made to her, but I do not believe that arming every one of our officers is a sensible or practical option. So what do you say to that, Tony?
Look, you know, Sue and I are probably singing off the same song sheet to a large extent. We do need a broad approach to how we deal with terrorism, but I don't think terrorism is just the issue. You know, to me, it's a health and safety issue. I don't see, you wouldn't put someone in a building site and say, well, we're going to give you a yellow reflective jacket and we're going to give you, you know, steel toe cap boots, but we're not going to give you a hard hat. Police officers deal, particularly uniform response officers, have to go to situations, they have to go into the unknown every day of the week. Now, the 2 most recent situations that we're talking about where police officers have come to harm have been terrorist situations, but daily in the capital and across the whole country, police officers are responding to very violent situations. You know, we have a huge knife crime problem in London right now. You know, way too many young men are getting killed by knife attacks. It's police officers, uniformed police officers, that are responding to those attacks. So, to me, the fact that it was dealt with within 8 minutes, I'm hugely proud of all the officers that attended the scene, both unarmed and armed. But prior to the armed response vehicles getting there, bearing in mind this was in central London where there are a lot of armed response vehicles, we know that unarmed officers who were first on the scene were seriously injured, trying to do a job without the equipment to do it. Well, interestingly enough, I'm in Nice at the moment, and as I walked to the studio, I stopped and spoke to 3 French police officers. One of them spoke pretty well perfect English, and I told them, you know, where I was going and what the debate was going to be about, and I said, well, you know, what do you think of uniformed, you know, first responders going to the scene of situations like we had the other night? And actually, one of the officers had been present in Nice. He wasn't one of the officers that fired shots, but he was many of his colleagues were, that stopped the lorry attack. And the English-speaking officer explained it to his colleagues, and he took their answers and he said to me, "We think you're crazy. You know, it's insanity. You can't deal with suicide bombers or people with knives with plastic batons. It's insane."
So you do make the point that those terror attacks did take place and the officers around there were armed.
Absolutely, they were armed and they responded. There's been an increase in armed response vehicles. Having firearms should be a last resort. We do not want, and I disagree with Tony, because when you look at America, you know, we know one weapon against another, the increase in firearms incidents, that's what I think will happen. Even in Paris, in Manchester, it wouldn't have mattered if you had a police officer in every road armed. that was going to happen. What will make a difference is a policing strategy where communities work closer together. I do subscribe about community policing. We need more officers involved and engaged.
Because we're in big cities now, and we saw that 8-minute response at London Bridge, which we all know is absolutely
fantastic.
Fantastic, yes. What about seaside towns? What about towns in the north of England, little villages?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody had a lone wolf attack somewhere like that, they're not going to get an 8-minute response.
nodding in agreement.
Yeah,
with that.
absolutely. But also remember, Holly, you will not have an armed officer on every street. You have to look at a long-term policing strategy, which that's why the
what we're
government...
saying is you could do.
You can't, Holly. How can you do that overnight? How long you saw when you came, and you two have been aware of that training, the amount of training that takes place. Officers, 50% of officers do not want to be armed. Today I've been asking officers, I'm still in regular contact with cops, they do not want to be armed. You will have to change regulations, paying conditions. There may come a time in the future we'll have direct entrance of people who want to carry a firearm. I would never want to do that. And let's not forget this country. I really get frustrated. You know, we are still very upset about stop and search in some communities where we know it works, when Tony has mentioned a knife crime. Let's get behind our cops. Stop whining and whinging about stop and search, whining and whinging when someone wrongly tasers someone who's fronting them, and actually get behind our cops. Okay. One minute, you know, we're all, oh, let's do this with the police. Next minute, we're complaining about and giving them comprehensive reviews about their actions.